Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. Today is something very, very different. We are celebrating 10,000 subscribers. Before I get into it, I just want to say thank you so much. If you are one of those 10,000, I appreciate you more than you will ever know. And if you're not one of those 10,000, you're watching this today, do consider subscribing. But today is to celebrate those of you that have supported the channel over the last few months since we started. We only started at the beginning of this season. The growth has been incredible. But most importantly, I love what we're building here on this channel. I truly do see each and every one of you as a family member. It's absolutely brilliant. I love the community we're building, and this is just a way to get to know me a little bit better for those of you that are interested in the person behind the videos. So today I've asked for questions over on Twitter and YouTube. I've compiled a list of them. I've separated them to different topics. All of the timestamps will be down below if you're only interested in a certain topic of questions. But without further ado, let's jump into today's video. Right, guys, let's get into the video today. So it's going to be fairly chilled. There is a little bit of FPL talk at the end, but mainly this is just focused on a really casual Q&A for those of you that do want to get to know me better. I haven't scripted any of these answers. In fact, I've tried not to look at the answers apart from when I made the graphics, just so that they're a fairly natural response. And again, this might end up being an incredibly long video. I've got no idea at this stage. What I've done is I've just separated it into 3 different sections, just so that you've got a bit of clarity as to what you're watching. It's not just a complete random mess of questions. As we'll discuss later on, you know I'm a fairly organized person. So the first section is on writing a book. Actually, the majority of the questions were around writing a book. I think a lot of people want to write a book, and as a result, a lot of people are interested in the process behind that. So the first section is around writing a book. The second question is around sort of personal questions and also like YouTube, career, academia related questions as well, getting to know me a little bit better and sort of my journey thus far. And then the final section are a couple of like football and FPL related questions as well. So like I said, timestamps will be down below. If you only want to skip to a specific section, feel free. You don't have to watch the entire video. This is just for those of you that do want to get to know me better. So let's jump into the first set of questions. So as I said, first set of questions are around the book that I've written. So just as a little introduction, most of you that have watched the channel for a while will know it's obviously The Mind Game. I can actually show you now. Normally I've got the green screen behind me, and the green screen like ruins the text because it's obviously green. So I obviously have written this book. We've got loads of questions around it, which I'll answer, but this is the book that we're referring to. Published it this summer, so summer 2021. So it's been out about 6-7 months now. Obviously incredibly proud of it, incredibly excited. And as a result, there were a lot of questions around the process of writing the book. So the first question was, what inspired you to write your book at such an early age? Now, this is a great question. So I am 24 years old, which is something that has caused a lot of chaos in the FPL community over on Twitter. Despite the fact that I am bald and despite the fact that I've written a book and that I am doing a PhD, I am only 24 years old, almost 25 though in March. So the thing that inspired me to write a book is that I've always had a passion for writing since a very, very early age, hence being in academia, hence doing a PhD. I've always found it relatively easy to get what is in my brain onto paper. Some people have difficulties writing, some people have difficulty speaking, but generally speaking, I've found it quite easy to get what I'm thinking onto paper. And I can write quite a large amount of words in quite a short period of time, specifically if I'm very passionate about it. So I've always wanted to write a book. I've tried a few times in the past to write books. I think I tried like a romance novel, like a thriller. I tried writing a few fiction books, and I quite struggle with the narrative building and drawing everything together, character development, and ending with a punch at the end with some sort of dramatic twist normally at the end. I sort of struggle with that narrative side of things. So I always ended stopping after about 35, 40 pages when I struggled to build the narrative, the characters weren't developing, etc. And I always knew I wanted to write a book. And so then obviously this opportunity came up. And I guess what inspired me to do this was I started to write some threads on Twitter about a year and a half, 2 years ago now in the FPL community. I then started writing for FPL Connect. I started doing articles on a weekly basis. A lot of those were psychology based. I think my first one was around the effect of having no fans in the stadiums on the players. I then wrote one on FOMO and how fear of missing out can drive our decision making. Obviously there was some of the stuff that you can see in the book was mentioned in those articles as well. And a lot of people would ask me for advice. How do I cope with negative outcomes? How do I stop falling victim to FOMO? What do you think about this? What do you think about that? And I ended up constantly having to fetch random threads and random articles in different formats and send them via DMs. And it was all a bit messy. And I kept getting questions. Can you write an article about this? And I was thinking there is so much to cover here. And everyone finds it incredibly interesting. And I find it incredibly interesting as well. And I thought, how about I write a book? How about I seek a way to get almost like an FPL psychology Bible, where if someone has a question about FPL psychology, it's almost definitely included in the book. And obviously this book is not exhaustive. There are things that I didn't mention just due to word limit, time limit, etc., not wanting to make it too complex. But most of what you would need to know about psychology applied to FPL can be covered in that book. And I wanted that one resource for everyone. Some people think it's a money grabbing technique. I won't go into the finance right now. but I have earned probably less than a month's wage via this book. Obviously, we sell them for $8.99 for a book or $5.99 for an ebook. We're obviously not taking all of that. There's the cost of post and packaging. There's the cost that goes to the publishers. There's the cost of the print run itself. When you actually print, it's very, very expensive. Specifically, as we got basically the most expensive paper you can so that it's really good quality. So this was not a money grabbing technique. That isn't what inspired me to write the book. I've made very little from it. I'm very passionate about writing, and I wanted that one resource that everyone could go to. And I'm so proud. When you look at your book, and you can see it in the top corner, obviously, Ross Dowsett, when you can see your name on a book, it's just so incredible. To hold a book that you've written, it's a really proud feeling. So I guess a bit of pride, always had a passion for writing, and I wanted that one resource for all FPL managers. That's what inspired me to write write a book at such an early age. Why not? It's just social norms, things like you can't write a book when you're young, or you can't do this when you're young. I think the earlier the better. And now I've got plenty of time to write a second, third, and potentially fourth book as well. So I love writing, and I wanted a resource for all FPL managers. So the second question around writing a book was, how long did it take to write The Mind Game? A lot of people have this question. To be honest, when I first started writing my book, I remember Googling lots of stuff about how long does it take to write a book? How many words can you realistically write in a day? And it does largely depend on what the book is and how much knowledge you have. For example, if you're writing a fiction book, it largely depends on how well you can build a narrative in your head and whether you've already got that character development in your mind. When you're writing a fiction book, a non-fiction book, I should say, it depends on how much knowledge you already have of the process, what you think with respect to the structure, and also how much research you need to do. So that is one of the main reasons that writing my book took so long, in that I had to research all of the articles that I wrote about in the book. So a lot of it's not opinion-based, a lot of it is factual information pulled from articles in the scientific field. And as a result, I had to get it completely accurate. I had to cite it correctly. I had to reference it correctly. So a lot of my time was actually spent researching as well as writing. With respect to how long the entire process took, it was just shy of 14 months. So it was just over a year it took from the entire process of first writing those first couple of words, that introduction, all the way down to publication. It was just over 12 months, just under 14, I think was the exact time frame. With respect to how long it actually took to write it, I think I had the first draft done in around 6 to 8 months. And the first draft was around 35,000 words. So not that long, I guess, to do. Obviously, I did start this before I started the PhD, in between my master's degree and my PhD degree, which we'll discuss later. So I had a lot more free time then. And then when I got about 70% in, I applied for a PhD and I got the PhD, and that obviously slowed down the writing slightly. But I had a time frame that I knew I wanted. I wanted to publish it at the start of the 2021-22 season. And as a result, I knew I had just over a year to finish it. So I sort of had that frame of reference as to how long it needed to take. So yeah, 6 to 8 months for the first draft. I think I finished most of the writing within 10 months, and that was just under 50,000 words I think we finished on, just under 10 months. And those final 2 months are just tidying up, editing, sending off for the print run, thinking about advertising, promotions, etc. So quite a long time, I guess. But yeah, I think you could probably get a book like this done in around 6 to 8 months from start to finish if you're very dedicated and you've got a lot of free time. I had to spend a lot of time writing in the early hours of the morning because I just didn't have time elsewhere. So it takes a lot of passion, a lot of commitment. But yeah, not that long of a period, I guess. So question 3 is a fantastic one, and everyone will approach this differently. But the question is, when writing a book, did you get any writer's block, and what did you do to overcome it? So absolutely 100%. But similarly to what I've said before, there is a very big difference between fiction and non-fiction books. And so when I wrote The Mind Game, it wasn't fiction, and therefore I didn't have writer's block with respect to, again, building a narrative, character development, etc. What I had writer's block with respect to is, how do I get the most from what I've got here? How do I simplify enough so that it's very clear what these complex psychological theories and concepts mean without patronizing the reader? So sometimes I'd writer's block with respect to like transforming difficult information into easy to digest information. And sometimes I also had writer's block more with respect to like the structure of the book and how I wanted it to flow, ordering of chapters, whether I wanted some practical examples, did I want a questionnaire in there? So there were a lot of times when I just sat down and I was really struggling and I struggled to write. My big technique for this, and this is for procrastination in general, is to just start. I guarantee that the most difficult thing to do every single time is to start. I don't think we ever get like an hour into our workflow and start to think, oh, this is really difficult. It's always sitting down in the morning when you first get onto your computer. It's starting. You almost get into like a flow state if you just start. You'll get 5 minutes in and you think, right, this isn't as difficult as I thought. I can start doing some things. And I guess you just make sure that you're doing something. You're ticking along nicely. But if you need to, take a break. I think there was a period of about 2 or 3 weeks at one point when I just took a break, because sometimes your mind can just go blank. And when you look at the same thing over and over again, it can become very difficult. The other technique is just to ask other people to take a look at it. Sometimes a fresh pair of eyes can be absolutely amazing for you. There's also another technique to start. I think it was Ali Abdaal on his YouTube channel. If you don't watch Ali Abdaal, by the way, he's absolutely incredible for sort of like mindfulness, a little bit of psychology in the well, productivity. But he said you can almost have like a timer. So what you do is when you sit down, you set a timer, or if you've even got like a sand timer, you can flip the sand timer over. And what that does is you just say, right, I'm going to start for 5 minutes. All I'm going to do is 5 minutes work. After 5 minutes, I'm going to stop. I'm not even going to write the book after 5 minutes. What he says, and it's a brilliant technique, and I did use this, is after 5 minutes, you'll want to continue. After that first 5 minutes of sitting down, if you are truly working, you're not distracted, you're not on FPL, Twitter, whatever it may be, you will sit down and you'll be able to work past that 5 minutes and you'll want to. So it's almost just that first 5 minutes is really difficult. And like I said, if you can't develop that chapter, develop that structure, move on to another one or get someone else to take a fresh look or just take a bit of a break. So yes, I got writer's block, but I managed to persevere through. And I guess the thing is, if you're passionate enough about the project, nothing will be able to stop you. And that's not just with writing, that's with everything. So I was really passionate about finishing this. I really wanted to do it. I had that pride that I wanted. I wanted that resource for the community. And as such, I found it relatively easy to get through the writer's block. So another excellent question was, how many book cover drafts did you go through before deciding on the final one? Now, of course, this is the final one. I'll also probably flash up the final one at the end so you can see it next to the rest. I'll also try and just flash up a few different versions of what we went through, just that you've got an idea of how different some of them are. So I actually didn't know how almost complicated this process would be, or more so how the actual process would go. So when we first started, I was trying to be really specific color schemes, really specific words on the front cover, whatever it may be. And my publishers kept reminding me that it's not that specific. At first, you need to almost have like a general philosophical approach to what you want it to look like. Do you want it to be abstract? Do you want it to be cartoony? What sort of theme do you want to go for with the book? And even more importantly for us, because normally with an FPL book, you have an FPL theme. Mine is a psychology and FPL book. So we needed to know, do we want to go more down the psychology route? Do we want to go more down the FPL route? Do we want a mix between the two? So at first, it was really about that general structure. So what we went through is we went through about 4-5 different kinds. So as again, I'll try and flash them up now for you. 4 or 5 different kinds. Some were cartoony, some were quite colourful, some had footballs on, some didn't, some had football pitches, some went for the same colour as the FPL colour scheme. And it was really difficult to try and tell. And generally speaking, I quite liked almost like the beigey, subtle colour scheme because I thought it was quite unique. I thought it was quite fresh and I thought it was quite simplistic. And I don't think a very cartoony front cover represents the nature of the book or represents who I am as a person. Again, if you've watched my videos for a while, you probably understand that. So I quite like that almost beigey colour. And I also like the phrenology. And the phrenology is the skull head with different areas topographically representing different parts of the brain. And I quite liked that. So we almost wanted to mix a little bit of phrenology, wanted to have a basic-ish colour, but we also wanted to make it clear that it was an FPL book because the title, The Mind Game, without the subtext gaining a psychological edge in Fantasy Premier League, isn't overtly Fantasy Premier League based. And I didn't want people to look at it, not realise it was FPL and skip over it. So putting all of that together, we wanted phrenology, we wanted a fairly sort of neutral colour scheme, but we also wanted a bit of FPL, which is how we ended up on this, in that you've got the phrenology skull. And also, I don't know, some people don't really realise this, we've actually edited some of the words on the front cover. So bench boost, you've got wildcard, free hit, captaincy, form, etc. So some of the words have actually been edited from on the front cover as well. And we've also got, obviously, the arrows as well, the green and red arrows. So it took a while. So generally, the entire process from start to finish, first contacting the cover designer to the very end, I would say was probably about 10 weeks. And I think we probably went through 4, 5, 6 independent drafts. We finally got to one that was similar to this, but nowhere near this finalized product. And then we probably went back and forth maybe 4 or 5 times. You normally give the cover designer about a week at a time. So each week he'll come up with a new design, freshen it up a little bit. And then it was just after that, it was just trying to really finalize the details. Little things like the spine as well. So the spine and the back cover as well. So it was just a mixture of everything. Probably took up to 10 weeks. And yeah, almost maybe 10 different drafts. 6 different unique ones, and then once we finalized, we went through a few different iterations of that. So hopefully that gives you an idea. It does take a long time, but what I liked was that the publishers gave me the final say, which is absolutely fantastic. And I went with quite a small publishing company. They're called Halcyon Publishing, if you're interested in publishing a football book of some kind. And they gave me a lot of say in it, and they gave me the final say. So a lot of the time we had a bit of a disagreement, and it did come up to me. And so I feel like I had quite a lot of control over the end product, and I'm fairly happy with it. So let me know down below if you're watching this, what you think of the front cover. I'm absolutely delighted with it in the end. So the 5th and final question is a little bit more FPL based, which would be great for those of you that are just really interested in the FPL side of things, is how much did you discover while writing your book that you started implementing in your approach to FPL? Again, a fantastic question and quite a lot. And obviously I'm not going to go into specifics about theories and concepts which I started applying because in my opinion, all 50,000 words should be applied in some sense to the game. There was a few things. The first would be my approach to the negative aspects of the game. I've always had quite a fairly sort of stable personality. I don't tend to get too affected by different events in my life. I'm fairly positive in my attitude. I try and take the positive side to things. I'm always smiling because I think that's critical in life, that you take a positive approach. But don't get me wrong, I still am, and I was before I started writing the book, very, very affected by FPL. And that's why I'm so interested in the mental health side of things. And therefore, almost giving advice on a repeated basis and also writing the book, I realized I needed to start taking my own advice, and I needed to start implementing these techniques on a more regular basis. So I suppose the big thing that I learned was how to approach FPL with a more positive attitude, how to realize we really don't have control over the end outcome, how to realize that after we've submitted, there's not a lot we can do other than just put in the perfect team, and then also how to let go a little bit quicker, because sometimes I would hang on to an event. For example, the Game Week 9 Havertz captaincy over Salah is a brilliant example of, I would sometimes hold on to that for far too long, but I've learned to let that go, and I've got my own techniques. Obviously, a lot of them are mentioned in the book, but I guess that is the main thing. The second thing is, I think I realized I needed to be a slightly more patient manager. A lot of the biases that I talk about in this book are almost when you're overreactive and you're constantly trying to almost overmanage your team, and you feel like you're always trying to get one up on your opponents and everyone else in the game. So the second thing that I learned was just to be a little bit more patient, and sometimes doing nothing is sometimes the best. And I guess the third and final thing is to just be a little bit more self-reflective when you're going through it. So I guess the entire point of this book is to start thinking introspectively, start thinking about who you are as a person, who you are as a manager, and start critically reflecting on the way you make decisions. So rather than being a specific concept, which I've learned from this book, because a lot of it I already had the knowledge of, it's how to incorporate that into your FPL decision making, and how to, on at least a weekly basis, sometimes on a daily basis, just think critically about the decisions that you make. So I guess those are the three key things: how to deal better with negative outcomes and negative emotions associated with FPL, how to be a slightly more patient manager, and how to sometimes realize that doing nothing is sometimes the best option. And number three, also just to think more critically and reflect introspectively every now and again about the way that I'm making decisions in Fantasy Premier League. So the next set of questions are personal / YouTube based questions. So we're going to talk a little bit about who I am as a person, some personal questions related to how I approach life, academia, YouTube, etc., and just generally get to know me a little bit better outside of the book and also outside of FPL and football as well. So the first question is, do you have a degree in psychology? And then there was a second question sort of associated, when will you post a video on your PhD? So we'll talk about YouTube a bit later, but generally speaking, it's very dangerous to try and have a YouTube channel where you talk about too many different things. So as such, I don't really talk about my PhD too often unless it's relevant to either a live stream or to an FPL Psychology 101 video. But I will talk about it a little bit here. I'll talk a little bit about my academia and my background. If you're not interested, just skip to the next section. So yes, I have multiple degrees in psychology. So basically, when I was in my GCSEs around the age of 15, I was lucky enough that my school at the time, and this wasn't that common about 9-10 years ago now when I was 15, it wasn't that common to be able to do a GCSE in psychology. But luckily I could do a degree in a GCSE in psychology, and I could do also a GCSE in sociology as well. So I took both of those and I really enjoyed them. I think I got like 99% in sociology and I got 100% in psychology at my GCSE. So I thought, wow, not only do I really like this, I think I have a knack for understanding these different theories and applying these concepts. And obviously that was at around the age of 15, 16. So I decided to study psychology at A-level. So for my A-levels, I did history, English language and literature, psychology, and also philosophy and ethics. So I did those four as AS levels, and I loved psychology as well. So I really enjoyed it. My first AS level year, I did all right. It was like sort of 90%. In my second year for A-levels, I got 100% again during my psychology A-level. So again, something that not only was I quite passionate about, I absolutely loved. I realized that I was actually quite good at it. And sometimes if you can combine what you're passionate about and you're good at that thing, it probably means you should pursue it. And I knew that I wanted to go to university because I've always had that academic background. I love reading, I love writing. I can sort of understand quite complex materials quite easily, and I can reflect that in writing relatively easily as well, which is why I was so comfortable writing the book. And as a result, I decided that if I was going to go to university, I should do the topic that I'm most passionate about and the topic that I'm probably best at. So I decided to go and do a bachelor's degree in psychology. Now, this was just what we call like sort of plain psychology. It was basically, in your bachelor's, you do basically every topic associated with psychology. So there's a topic on social, topic on neuroscience, topic on cognitive psychology. The reason I did this is I knew I loved psychology, but I wasn't entirely sure which aspect or which field of psychology I really wanted to go into. And during this bachelor's degree in psychology, I realized quite quickly that I loved cognitive psychology, but I didn't really know where a career in cognitive psychology would leave me. And there were certain things that I didn't quite like about cognitive psychology. Obviously, at the same point, I absolutely loved sport, and that I knew that my passion was in football. We'll discuss a bit later my background in professional football, but I've got an absolute passion for psychology. I've got absolute passion for football. can I maybe combine the two of them? And obviously there is a field known as sport psychology or sport and exercise psychology. So coming towards the end of my bachelor's degree, I thought I want to go on to do a master's. I want to continue studying because I love studying. I'm one of the very few people. And as a result, I thought, what can I do that combines those two? And I realized that sport and exercise psychology might be a good point, but maybe incorporating some of that cognitive side of things as well, which I really enjoy. And cognitive psychology, for those that don't really follow psychology, it's about people's cognitions, i.e. the way they think and the way they make decisions. So all of the biases that I talk about in the book, you would say that is probably cognitive psychology. So finished up my bachelor's. I actually managed to get valedictorian during my bachelor's, which basically means you get the best grade in the entire cohort, which I was really proud of because it was quite a competitive university as well. So I managed to get valedictorian. Obviously got there, got the pick of the master's degrees. Went on to do my master's degree, which is in sport and exercise psychology. So rather than just doing broad psychology now, focused really hard on sport and exercise psychology. And what I specialized in during my master's degree is the psychophysiological and attentional mechanisms of penalty taking under pressure, which is basically a posh way of saying we looked at people that were taking penalties under pressure and we measured their gaze behavior through eye tracking, a mobile eye tracker, and we measured their heart rate as well to see if their heart rate increased under pressure or whether some potentially resilient players were able to maybe reduce their heart rate under pressure. So we explored a lot of that. Obviously incorporating football and psychology was absolutely amazing. Managed again to pick up valedictorian during my master's degree, which is basically again the best grade in the cohort. So I was very, very lucky that I was managing to perform quite well at university despite also enjoying it as well. And that meant that I could then go on to do a PhD. I took a bit of a gap between my master's and my PhD because I was unsure what I wanted to do my PhD in exactly. And also PhDs are quite competitive, so you have to really be passionate about what you want to do. So I took about a year and a half out. I actually was assistant manager at Under Armour retail store just to earn a little bit of money whilst I was deciding what to do with my PhD. After doing that for a year and a half, I then applied for a PhD, got the PhD, and that PhD is around skill acquisition in sport, specifically the role of virtual reality in skill acquisition. So what we're looking at is, can you use virtual reality systems to enhance expertise or accelerate expertise in elite sport? So for example, if a player is injured or potentially weather permissions don't permit, or sometimes you just want to incorporate quite a few different rotations and elements. With virtual reality, you can incorporate different forms of augmented feedback. You can incorporate different forms of stress, fatigue, etc. So virtual reality, we think, could be quite a useful training technique in elite football. But to this stage, there's not been that much research. So it's quite a novel PhD, but that's what I'm focused on in the PhD, this role of virtual reality and skill acquisition. So I suppose that's a pretty long introduction to what I'm doing at the moment. That's a pretty thorough background as to what I've done academically thus far. Maybe if I ever do another YouTube channel, which we're going to discuss in a bit, I might end up incorporating some of the academia side into that channel. But for the time being, I think that's about as much detail as I probably want to go into in an FPL video. But if there are any further questions, let me know down in the comments. If you have any questions around any of this, let me know down in the comments and I'll sort of continue the Q&A in comment form as well. So the second personal question is, what inspired you to take the plunge into creating FPL content? Now, I love creating content for the FPL community. Like I said, before I moved over to Twitter, if you're fairly recent to who I am, I did a lot of writing via threads, via articles on a weekly basis, sometimes twice a week. And I absolutely loved that. But after writing the book and also doing my PhD as well, I did slightly fall out of love with writing, or I think more realistically what happened is I just had a little bit of writing burnout. I just did so much writing. And sometimes, specifically with modern day society, writing isn't as well received as videos. People can't be bothered to pick up a book and read. Or if they want some FPL content, they'd much rather sit down for 15 minutes and watch an Andy Let's Talk FPL video than sit down for half an hour and read a detailed article written by myself. So I found that it wasn't as rewarding as it once was, and I still wanted to continue creating content. At this time, I'd also been teaching at university. So when I started my PhD, I started as an academic associate, which means that I also lecture alongside my PhD. So I'd been teaching for about a year, and I love public speaking. I love being able to teach. In fact, I think my calling in life is to teach. I think I can digest knowledge and reproduce it in a way that is quite straightforward and easy to understand, and I love it. And I don't think there's any better feeling than teaching people. So I love teaching, I love creating content, and I love public speaking as well. And for about sort of 10, 15 years maybe, since I can remember, every single time I had the choice of what to watch on TV or what I was watching dinner, I'd always watch YouTube videos. I think my first YouTuber that I really liked was Syndicate. If you do watch sort of like Minecraft videos or Call of Duty videos, I've watched him for almost like 10, 15 years now. Absolutely love that. Then I moved over to sort of FIFA YouTube videos like Nepenthes and A9 Skills and that sort of stuff. And also I just watched some general random YouTube videos. I've been in love with YouTube for as long as I can remember. So combine my love of YouTube, my love for public speaking and teaching, and also loving to create content, but falling out of love slightly with writing and not thinking it was worth the reward, I decided that I wanted to take the plunge into creating FPL content. Now, literally about 2 weeks after I decided to start making the graphics and start thinking about creating this channel, Fantasy Football Fix contacted me and they said that they've got a position and open up. They've seen me on a couple of podcasts. They've seen me on a few YouTube videos. For example, I featured on Let's Talk FPL Andy's YouTube channel as well. They'd seen me on a few and they wanted to know if I wanted to take a role with them as a content creator on YouTube. Now, I obviously thought this was amazing. It aligned perfectly with what I wanted to achieve. It was almost like it all just lined up, all the stars aligned all at once. And just as I decided I wanted to create content, they contacted me. They were also willing to provide me with some equipment. So a lot of the equipment that I used today was provided by Fantasy Football Fix, which is absolutely incredible. They're so generous. They're so supportive. And yeah, it just aligned perfectly. And it just meant that I was ready at the start of this season to just crack on with FPL content. And I spent a long time making all of the graphics. And I'm not of the belief that you shouldn't. I know the popular belief is if you're worried about something, just start. It doesn't need to be perfect, just start. And I do agree for most people that's the case, but that's just not who I am. So I wanted to make sure that when I started, it was virtually perfect or as close as you could get to perfect for someone just creating content. And some of the best compliments that I receive are around, it looks like you've been creating content for years. That obviously is such a nice compliment because before about 4 or 5 months ago, I'd never been creating any content. So yeah, that's why I decided to get involved with the content. And obviously it aligned perfectly with Fantasy Football Fix as well. So I can't thank them enough for the role that they've played in kickstarting my YouTube career. So third question is, how long does it take you to make YouTube videos? Which is a great question. And then sort of a similar question around that is, which software do you use to make videos? So I think maybe over the summer, I might do a little video on how to get started on YouTube and how to create content on YouTube and a little bit around that. But generally speaking, videos do vary massively. So the longest a video has taken me is 12 hours from start to finish. The majority of that is made up of creating the graphics and doing the research to put into the graphics as well. The recording itself tends to only take me about an hour maximum. I record, obviously the videos are about 47 minutes long. Sometimes I have to re-record different segments. Sometimes the technology will fail me, etc. But recording itself probably only takes an hour. Editing and processing maybe takes me about an hour as well. And then the upload, as long as it's uploaded, I can let that sort of happen in the background. So that back part maybe only takes 2 hours, 2.5 hours. The actual graphic creation takes a really long time, but it's worth it because obviously I get so many compliments on it. And I think that's what makes the YouTube videos so nice to watch, is that the graphics are pretty clear and easy to understand. But obviously that does take a long time. They're all made very specifically on software rather than being made on like PowerPoint or Excel where you can just type in the numbers really quickly. The graphic creation, like I said, the longest it's taken me is 12 hours from start to finish. Most videos, I would say, take me around 3 to 4 hours when it's like a game week preview video. So when I've got lots of tables, lots of stats, lots of comparisons, they're around 3 to 4 hours. So I'd say the game week preview videos take me about 6-7 hours in total. With respect to the team selection videos, the graphics are a little bit quicker to make because it's normally just making my team. They're probably about an hour, hour and a half-ish. So I think anywhere from about, on average, about 4 to 7 hours, but some take me as much as 12 hours. And I think the quickest video I've ever done was when I did like a reaction to a double game week announcement, and that took me about 3 hours start to finish. So that gives you a bit of an idea about how long it takes to create videos. Some people might take significantly longer. Some people might be able to do it significantly quicker. It largely depends on the level of production that you want to achieve with your videos. The question around which software do I use and what equipment, etc. So with respect to the software, I use Adobe, which is like a monthly subscription fee. I think it's like £45 or something like that per month, which is well and truly worth it to create good content. So I use Adobe Photoshop to create the graphics. I use Adobe Premiere Pro to edit the videos, and I use OBS Studio. What I'm recording in now is OBS Studio, and that's also what I use to stream live to YouTube. You can get free versions of all of that stuff. For example, for the graphic creation, I know that Canva is a great option. And also if you're on iMac or some sort of Apple device, you can also get iMovie, which is a great version to edit videos as well. So Canva and iMovie are probably the two best free versions, but I think it's worth paying because you get better production quality with Adobe. And then OBS Studio, everyone uses. With respect to the equipment, this is a Shure MV7 microphone. Quite expensive, but kindly provided by Fantasy Football Fix, of course, but I think pretty good quality. The only reason that it might not sound fantastic is I'm in a pretty echoey room without much furniture in it. So that's the only reason why it shouldn't. Obviously, the closer you get to the microphone, such as for a podcast, the better the quality as well. That's why I've got a boom arm. So this is, oops, smacked it. This is a Rode PSA-1 boom arm. This is about £80 for the boom arm. So again, this equipment's pretty expensive. Then the camera that you're looking at, hopefully you think is good quality. That is a Sony ZV-1, and that is the most expensive piece of equipment that I have. and I think it's worth it. It's actually a vlogging camera, but it works pretty well on a stand as well. The lighting's like studio lighting. Again, that comes up to about £200, so really, really expensive. And then I've got an Elgato green screen, which is the one which literally pulls up and then stands back down as well. And that, again, is just over £100. So it's an expensive business if you want high quality production. But if you see how most YouTubers start, and they've been very, very successful, you don't necessarily need high production quality. You don't necessarily need to use the best software or the best equipment. But I wanted to, and I think that's part of the reason, as well as hopefully the content as well, as part of the reason why I've been able to reach 10,000 subscribers so quickly, is that the production quality is pretty good. So I started on the right foot. I invested a lot of money alongside Fantasy Football Fix, but I think the investment normally pays back as long as you're pretty sure that you want to do YouTube long term. So question 4 was a question, but also a compliment. So thank you very much. What does your future look like? You've exploded onto the FPL scene and are studying for a PhD. What road do you think you'll follow? And then a very similar question, which I was asked about 2 or 3 times, are any plans to go full-time YouTube? So my future is very open-ended. I just think with life, I've had a few instances recently as well, which have put life into perspective, and you just don't know what's going to happen in life. We take life for granted. We literally take living for granted, and we take the fact that we're going to live till the age of 80 and 90 for granted as well. And it's just not the case for a lot of us. So that might sound fairly morbid, but I've been doing a lot of reading recently about the finitude of life, and the fact that we don't live forever, and that you do need to enjoy the moment and also not plan too far in advance. And that's pretty difficult for me as someone that's very, very organized, structured, and have elements of OCD in my life as well, where I try and plan and control absolutely everything. And I've realized that you can't. And sometimes you've just got to do what you're enjoying and see what happens and let life take its course and decide for you sometimes. So obviously I've started my PhD now because it's a part-time PhD, because I'm also lecturing part-time as well. So I do around sort of 20, 30 hours PhD, around 20, 30 hours of teaching as well. So because I'm doing that, it's a 5-year PhD. So I've still got around 4 years left of my PhD. I've obviously only started YouTube 6 months ago as well. So I think my plan currently is to see, of course, I'm not going to end up quitting the PhD. I'm going to see out the remainder of the PhD and keep this YouTube channel going alongside that. Of course, the priority should remain the PhD, but at the same time, that doesn't mean that I'm going to sacrifice the YouTube channel because I love it. What that means is that I'll just work extra hard to make sure that both get the attention that they deserve, because both are incredibly important to me. With respect to which road I think I'll follow, I don't know at this stage. And I think, obviously, my whole life I've been working towards a job where my PhD would mean something. And even if I get the PhD and I don't go down that road, it still means something, because I've worked so hard. And the skills that I've learned across my bachelor's, master's, and PhD have allowed me to run this channel successfully. They've provided me with the skills such as public speaking, such as presenting, such as the ability to research and produce and digest content in a concise way. And all of it, everything that I've done in my life is compounded and led to where I am now. So I guess the PhD will continue 100%, and I might end up going down that route. However, I absolutely love the YouTube. And obviously YouTube, the ceiling is incredibly high, whereas becoming a lecturer, the ceiling is probably just lecturing at the best university in the UK, most likely. Whereas YouTube can continue to develop, you can then continue to write books, you can have multiple channels as well. So I think YouTube has a higher ceiling, but at the same time, there's quite a lot of risks associated with YouTube. We'll almost always need lecturers, we'll almost always need psychologists as well. So whichever route I choose to go with a PhD, I'm probably likely to have a job of some kind, and it's likely to be pretty stable and pay quite well. With YouTube, I'm so reliant on so many things. Number one, YouTube remaining. Imagine that YouTube randomly goes bust or that they dissolve. I mean, it's very unlikely with the sort of brand that they've built. However, it could potentially happen. The second thing is, what happens with FPL? If FPL suddenly becomes an unfavorable game and no one really wants to watch it, what happens there? And number 3, what happens if people just don't enjoy my content anymore? And that does happen. I've watched YouTubers for sort of 5 or 6 years, and after watching them quite a long time, I just think, God, your voice is boring me. Your content's boring me now. I don't really want to watch you anymore. And that's always the worry, is that you're very reliant on so many people out of your control. You're reliant on YouTube. You're reliant on the people that make the game that you're covering content on, and you're reliant on your audience as well. So I don't know is the answer to this. I love both. And to be honest, I probably work, I'd say about 80, 90 hours a week, if you combine my YouTube with my teaching with my PhD. And also running my Twitter account, I guess, is part of promoting my channel. I wouldn't count that, but even if you remove the Twitter channel, the Twitter account, we're probably looking at about 80, 90 hours a week of work that I do. It's fine. I absolutely love it. It is not a job, the YouTube stuff. It's my hobby. It's my passion. And even the PhD in teaching. Teaching in particular is a passion for me. I love teaching. I never sit there and lecture and think, I wish I wasn't here. So I guess going to continue to run both. We'll see what happens with my life over the next 4 or 5 years. Anything can happen. We take life for granted. We take the fact that I'm going to be healthy. I might not be healthy in 4 or 5 years, and YouTube might not matter at all. So we'll see what happens with my life, but I'm delighted that I potentially have 2 or 3 different routes I could go down, and I feel very privileged that that's the case at this point in my life. So this is a great question. I think I could do an hour-and-a-half video just discussing this. So I'll just give like just my natural response to it. And I'll give a few opinions on how I manage. So the question is, how do you maintain a work-life balance and still include so much time towards your FPL, Twitter, and YouTube content? So if you consider the fact that when I started writing this book, or when I was finishing writing the book, I was writing the book, I was creating graphics for YouTube, I had a Twitter account, I had a PhD, I had a fiance at the time as well, I was lecturing, so I was doing about 5 or 6 different things. I finally dropped the book, i.e. because I finished and published the book. Then I started to move towards creating YouTuber content for 2 different channels and maintaining all of that stuff. So realistically, I've got about 5 or 6 jobs on the go at all time. Like I said, sometimes I push over 100 hours a week of work, and I also manage to live a life, of course. So I guess the question is, how do you manage that? I can't really comment too much. And the issue with this is that when people ask for advice, I know they mean well and they're asking, well, I really need some help. How can I do as much as you're doing? And what it comes down to is little decisions made over your entire life, compounding over a long amount of time. So if you haven't read the book Atomic Habits, please read it. It is a life-changing book, but it really does incorporate or explain at least how I've managed to keep this much up and keep this much going and why I don't burn out and why I don't particularly fatigue. And that's because since about the age of 12, I've been making decisions, small habits, which have allowed me to hopefully succeed 10, 12 years down the line. When you make little decisions every day, sometimes those decisions don't pay off straight away. So deciding to exercise rather than go out with your friends and drinking for 4 or 5 years might not pay off straight away. Deciding to do homework every single time, not miss a single one. Deciding to spend those extra 3 or 4 hours reading as opposed to doing another thing. Those decisions sometimes don't pay off straight away. And sometimes you'll continue to make good decisions and the world will just chuck it back in your face. And you feel like, why aren't I being rewarded for making all these brilliant decisions? That compounds over time. And by compound, I'm talking about like with interest. If you just put down $1 each day or £1 each day, over time that will compound and it will result in at some point your wealth exploding. And over time it might be that you make £3 million in a year, whereas at the start you were only making a couple of pounds every year. It just compounds over time. So those decisions, if you continue to make good decisions across your life and you decide to work on yourself and improve your dedication, your commitment, the way that you approach life in general, it will set you up to a stage where when someone says, how do you get that much done? I find it fairly easy and I've still got free time. And it's because over the last 10 years, I've been building a person that can deal with that and that is passionate enough about the stuff that I want to do. So I guess it's a little bit of my innate personality, my innate work ethic, my drive, a lot to do with my mum as well. My mum brought me up incredibly well. She is so passionate. She is so dedicated and she has a brilliant work ethic as well. And she taught me the correct things to do in life. So I'm very privileged and there is definitely something innate there. But I've also worked incredibly hard at a young age to be able to, at the age of 24, be able to do all of these different things. So I guess what I would say is start making the correct decisions now. It doesn't really matter what age it is. You can still have compounding growth when you're 40, 50, 60, but just start making those small decisions. Rather than eating that extra chocolate bar, just don't eat that extra chocolate bar. Rather than watching another Netflix documentary or another Netflix series of some kind or another comedy film, pick up a book and start reading. Rather than going out with your mates every single Friday and Saturday, one Friday and Saturday, go out for a hike. It sounds like this is not a very enjoyable way to live life, but when you realize that you're working on yourself and you're building something which hopefully will lead to success in the future, I find it fairly easy to sometimes sacrifice, I guess you could say life balance, but I still enjoy my life so much. And so I managed to balance it through all those different things. I know it's a bit of a cop-out answer, but there is no one golden rule. There's no specific formula to be successful. There's no specific formula to be able to do lots of things in your week. The key thing is just do what you enjoy, try your best, and like I said, continue to make small decisions that will be in favor of you, start to give you the advantage over others, and over time that will compound and lead to a stage where at some point, hopefully you'll explode into success and you'll be able to lead a happy life that you want to live. So the next question is, are you only going to be doing FPL videos on YouTube, or do you have plans to do something else as well? Definitely not. I'm definitely going to be doing other channels at some point. I just want to take care of my baby, which is this FPL channel, and it always will be. And I don't think it's right to create this FPL channel, get a bit of a following, and then go, right, I'm going to ditch FPL now. And to be honest, I love doing FPL videos. I love the editing. I love the research. I'm passionate about FPL. And as such, like I said, making videos is pretty easy for me. And I love the community as well. So the FPL channel will always stay. That's the first thing to note. The second thing is, I like talking about other stuff. As you can probably tell by the fact that we're doing this Q&A, as you can probably tell by the FPL Psychology 101 videos and the live streams and different things that I bring up, I love talking about life. I love talking about mindfulness and positivity. I love teaching. I love trying to improve people's life. And my motto in life is try to live a life worth living. And that will be probably the motto of my future YouTube channel. And it will just be called Ross Dowsett. And it's just going to be videos such as this. It will be edited to a significantly better standard. I'll take some editing courses that will make it a better quality video than this. But I'm definitely going to be making a Ross Dowsett YouTube channel at some point because I love talking about life. And like I said, for the age of 24, I do think I have a little bit of wisdom, but I will continue to learn. I read books quite a lot. I'm always interested in improving myself. And every time that I improve myself or I learn something, I want to pass that on because there's no point having knowledge if you're not going to pass that on and teach people. So definitely look out for it. Unfortunately, it will probably be when my PhD ends, if I decide to go down the YouTube route, which will probably be in like 3 or 4 years. So I don't think there'll be anything in the immediate short term because if I did, it would be at the expense of 1 or 2 FPL videos a week. And I just don't want to do that. I love the FPL channel. I love the FPL videos. And so I want to continue to grow that and to grow our family and grow our community as well. So yes, there are definite plans in place. Keep an eye out for it. If you have anything you would like me to do down below, if you think there are any channel ideas that you think would suit me. But yeah, it would be around sort of mindfulness, positivity, productivity, a bit of psychology as well, and just generally how to live a life worth living. Because yeah, I think all of us should try and live the best life we possibly can. Right, so this is a question which was super popular and I've discussed on Twitter recently as well. And it's about my footballing background, which I don't discuss too much because it sort of comes across as like claims to fame and trying to like glory hunt and trying to brag about my past. And it's not like that at all. I just think it's very, very interesting. But I know a lot of people are a bit sensitive about it, so I don't mention it too often. But the question is, I would love to hear more about your football career as it really does interest me. I remember you mentioning it, so some more stories with as much detail as possible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have some sort of, over there, some sort of slideshow of pictures of my past. So you can sort of look at those and I'll talk about some stuff over the top of that as well. So I have had a keen interest in football since the age of about 2. Apparently, just as I could start walking, my mum and dad dropped a ball at my feet, and apparently I hit it on the half volley back to my mum. Now, I don't know how true this story is, and I don't know about how true about the age, but apparently I had like impeccable timing to volley the ball, to kick a ball at an early age, and they realized quite quickly that I had a knack, an innate talent. Again, a lot of luck in my life, as you can tell, an innate talent to play football. So from an early age, my mum and my dad taught me how to play football. And I started playing Sunday League football at under 5s. So pretty much when you can just about run. I'm sure you've seen the clips. They're very cute of kids playing football. So around the age of under 5, I started playing Sunday League football. At the age of under 6, I was scouted by Arsenal, which is basically when their academy started at that stage. It was like the earliest age group. I played for Arsenal for about, I think it was about 8 to 10 months before I signed a contract. And they actually dropped me just before under 7s due to the fact that I hadn't had enough physical development. I was incredibly weak and they couldn't see me growing physically enough to represent Arsenal at that age level, which is remarkable because now I'm just over 5'9". I'm a fairly normal weight, probably the perfect weight and height for a winger, of which I am. And so it's crazy to think at that age they rejected me due to physical reasons. But that was the truth. They actually called me the day before my birthday and dropped me at Arsenal. So very sad story. But I bounced back. I went back to Sunday League football for about a year. And I played for a team called Lakeview, which was a Sunday League team. And we won 16 trophies in that year. We were incredible. It was actually myself and a very well-known player, Ainsley Maitland-Niles. We both played for Lakeview. So I played Sunday League football. I'll try and remember to flash up the picture now with me and Ainsley. But yeah, we played Sunday League football together. We were basically like hand in hand with most goals. So I played on the wing, normally left wing or right wing. Ainsley was an out and out goal scorer. So we'd link up quite a lot. I would assist Ainsley quite a lot. So at that time, like I said, he was a number 9. He was absolutely brilliant, always had the talent as well. So we both played at Lakeview together. I then went and signed for Tottenham after Lakeview, and then Ainsley went and signed for Arsenal. So he joined Arsenal just after I left Arsenal, and then I went and signed for Tottenham when Ainsley joined Arsenal. So after that incredible year of 16 trophies, basically that Sunday League team dissolved. Because we played so well, a lot of us were picked up by different academies. So Ainsley went to Arsenal, I went to Tottenham, and that was around just before under 8, sort of under 7s, under 8s. And I had stayed at Tottenham until the age of under 15. So it was just under 8 seasons I played for Spurs. Basically my entire childhood was spent playing football for Tottenham Hotspur. So I've got lots of different stories. I'm not going into it too much now. This might be again something for a second channel at some point, or potentially for a live stream of some kind. But yeah, played there for a long time. Obviously a lot of sacrifice required as a kid, and it was very, very hard on me. And I remember towards the end, I used to come home crying quite a lot. There was just so much pressure associated. And at that time, there weren't sports psychologists. There was no academy psychologist at the time. There was no one to discuss these things with. And I felt a lot of pressure. At that time, they were bringing over a lot of foreign players from different countries who some were a lot physically better, some were technically better. I felt the pressure. I felt the competition. And I wasn't enjoying the sport anymore. I just didn't enjoy it anymore. There was one specific story where we basically had an incredible tournament. I went to Belgium. I think I got player of the tournament in Belgium as well. We came back. I was training quite well. And at that time, we were just about to go into what they call day release, which is where they take you out of your GCSEs for 1 day a week. And for that full day, you play football. Now, that might sound incredible to the majority of you, but I love my education. And to think that I might be missing out a full day of my GCSE studying to go and play football, it didn't sit quite right with me. And I was quite worried. Anyway, so before the day release for GCSEs, they called each of the players into basically a meeting. And they told, what I didn't realize at the time, they told everyone that we basically weren't good enough, we needed to improve, and that we were wasting the coach's money and time, and that if we didn't improve, we wouldn't be offered day release. What I didn't realize is this was some sort of resilience test, which still looking back is absolutely appalling. But it was some sort of resilience test where they wanted to see how well we responded in the face of failure. Now, I understand the theory behind this, but I don't think sort of 14 years old is the age to be doing this, specifically for someone that's just got player of the tournament. I thought I was playing brilliantly. My confidence was high. So I came out and cried and told my mum, and she basically stormed in, had a meeting, and she said, what on earth is going on here? How can you tell this, my son that he's done X, Y, Z? There was a big argument, and they explained that this was some sort of resilience test and that clearly I hadn't passed this resilience test. And it was at that sort of stage that I realized I didn't like the way the academy was being run at that point. I wasn't enjoying football anymore. And to take away someone's passion that they've spent that many years playing, it just wasn't right. Specifically at the time as well, I was very, very injury prone because I was growing quite a lot. Like I said, I'm 5'9.5-ish right now, so I'm just under the average height for a UK guy. And therefore, when I say that I started off quite short, I therefore had a lot to grow, and I grew about a foot in a year at one point. So I had a lot of injury. I was quite injury prone at the time, wasn't enjoying it. I think I probably was on the verge of being dropped anyway. And I looked at it and thought, is it worth sacrificing my education for something I don't enjoy, something which I'm very injury prone and I might not be able to play even if I'm good enough? And thirdly, when I'm being treated the way I am and I don't even enjoy the way that the academy is being run. So I just decided at that stage, at the age of about 15, just as I was starting my GCSEs, to pack it in. And I decided that education was more important, and that if I wanted to play football, I could do so as a hobby. So at the age of about 15, I packed in football, and I haven't looked back. And seeing the things that I've achieved now, yes, I could be on a filthy amount of money, but there were so many talented players that didn't make it. So many talented, dedicated players that didn't make it. Specifically, one of my best friends at football, Joe Pritchard, he was incredibly talented, so good with the ball at his feet, but injuries held him back, and he wasn't even injury prone. And I look back and think the luck, skill, dedication, sacrifice that you need to be able to commit to becoming a professional footballer, I wasn't ready to do that. And I am perfectly happy with my decision. And what I can't thank enough is my mum that let me make that decision. And I can't thank her enough for being supportive, because when your son says, after you've, and she must have dedicated about 20 hours of her time every single week for about 8 years for me to get to that stage, for her to just say whatever you want is incredible parenting. It's that unconditional parenting, and I can't thank her enough for that. So yeah, I decided to leave at that time. Haven't looked back. I know a lot of the other questions is around players that I know that have made it, and this is showing that there aren't that many. So specifically in my sort of year group or my age group at Tottenham, the one that's made it probably the furthest is Kyle Walker-Peters. So he's obviously the right back now for the Saints. At the time, again, he would be happy to admit he was mediocre. He was on the verge of being dropped quite a few times. He was a tricky right winger, very, very skillful, but pretty poor attitude, and he didn't have that physicality as well. So he was actually, I would say, in the bottom half of the age group just before I left, around under 14s, under 15s. Again, he was a right winger, and just before I left, he actually picked up about a 16 or 18-month leg-breaking injury, and some were saying that he might not even return after that. So for him to get to where he has today, obviously a little bit of luck, but incredible dedication and commitment, and props to him. He was always an incredibly nice person, Kyle, so incredibly happy for him. One of the few that I would have been actually happy with, because there was a few with slight attitude problems back in the day. Obviously, Ainsley, I played with a little bit at Lakeview and a little bit at Arsenal as well, so I do know Ainsley quite well. Outside of that, Harry Winks was in the year group above, but due to Harry being quite young and due to me being sort of an average age for my year group, we often went together on tour, because tour was based on the year you were born rather than your age group. Bit complicated, but I often played on tour with Harry Winks quite a few times. He was always very, very technically gifted, but lacked that physicality and sometimes went missing in games. But obviously, he's changed that now, but he's always been a very, very technically gifted footballer. Outside of that, probably the two best footballers that I played with at Tottenham were Josh Onomah and Luke Amos. Josh Onomah is obviously at Fulham now, and Luke Amos is at QPR. So the two best footballers I've ever played with aren't even making it to sort of a Premier League standard. And outside of that, there aren't that many other footballers that I know of. And I played against a ton, and I played with a ton as well. And that just goes to show not many make it. And when you do drop out, you either end up playing sort of League One, League Two football, or you end up dropping out completely if it's due to injury or something. And then you're left with no education, no work experience, and you're left basically having to fight off potential poverty, potentially losing your job and being unemployed as well. So I'm glad I made the decision I had. I don't think I would have made it. Maybe I would have, but I'm perfectly happy I own the decision, and I can't thank my mum enough for letting me make that decision. So hopefully that's an interesting little background to my footballing career. I have still got a little bit of technique, but I don't really play football that much to the extent that I used to. So I only play for fun occasionally. But there is a Game Week 39 charity football event where 22 of the big Twitter accounts are going to play against each other in a North versus South event. I was obviously born in the South. I was born in Essex. So I'm going to represent the South, and it's going to be streamed hopefully live to YouTube. So you will get to see me at the end of the season playing an 11-a-side match. I'll probably be playing on the left wing. So you'll get to see me play a little bit of football. I definitely don't have the level of skill I used to have, but I do still play football a little bit. Let me know down below if any of you have a career in football, potentially like playing football as well. I suppose most of us that play FPL because we love football, and as such, I think a lot of us will probably have a bit of a background in football. So the next question, fantastic question as well, is do you approach any other aspect of your life like you do FPL? Pros and cons lists, stat blocks, tables. Is that the kind of person you are? Does that just suit how you play FPL? You can probably guess if you've watched my channel for a while, that is just the kind of person I am. So I'm an incredibly organized, rational, logical, analytical person. That is largely, again, one of the main ways that I'm able to get so much done on a weekly basis, and why I don't tend to neglect anything either. So I've been able to maintain relationships, YouTube, FPL, PhD, lecturing, writing a book, because when you're organized, you make sure that you dedicate your time to the things that need to be prioritized and the things that require the most time at that specific point. So obviously, I don't always give the same amount to my PhD as I do to FPL or to the book as I do to YouTube. You have to specify and prioritize at points in your life which require the most effort and which require the most time. So every single Sunday, I will sit down for over an hour and plan out my week ahead. This isn't literally just on Monday, I'm going to send this email. On Tuesday, I'm going to do this video. This is specifically how long is it going to take to do each task, which task needs to be prioritized, what deadlines have I got coming up, how much would it be an issue if I missed that deadline? Could I potentially push that deadline back? If I can I fit in another spot here? So I'm incredibly organized in everything that I do, and I always approach situations fairly logically. I am quite an emotional person though, as well, but I am fairly stable emotionally. So I don't tend to let that rock my decisions too much. And instead I am fairly sort of analytical and logical in my approach and very, very organized. So my advice, if you're struggling to get a lot done, is every Sunday, whatever time it may be, mine tends to be in the evening, about 8 till 9, sit down and really plan out your week ahead so that you know when you wake up on Monday morning exactly what you're doing and exactly why you're doing that on Monday morning as opposed to doing something else on a Tuesday morning, etc. So yes, I guess the short answer to that is I'm a very, very logical, analytical person. And the way that I approach these FPL videos is the same way that I approach my PhD, my teaching, and also everyday life as well. Right, I'm going to make this one fairly short because every time I want to record this, I keep changing my mind. It's just a bit of a strange question thrown in. What is the greatest television program of all time? So what I'm going to do, rather than doing just one because I can't, is I'm going to do my top 3 sort of longer series where the episodes are about an hour and they're sort of more serious by nature versus my top 3 short series. And by that, I mean the episodes are short. You know, that's sort of like 20, 30-minute episodes where they normally tend to be comedies. This top 3 list is definitely incorrect, and I keep changing my opinion on it, but I'm going to go for it. So my top 3 with respect to sort of the longer series are probably Breaking Bad, Prison Break, and Suits would be my top 3. I absolutely adore Suits. I know it's normally not that much of a popular one. I would have put Game of Thrones in there if not for the terrible last season, but I still think it's one of my top 5. I probably would have put it 4th, despite the fact that it didn't end particularly well. So yeah, I'd probably go Breaking Bad, Prison Break, and Suits. With respect to my 3 sort of shorter, light-hearted series, I would probably go for The Office US. Might be controversial. The Office US, Parks and Recreation, and then probably my 3rd and final one is probably Brooklyn Nine-Nine. But there are a couple of other good ones in there. I do like Modern Family, How I Met Your Mother, Friends, etc. There are so many good ones, but I would probably go for those 3 for the sort of shorter series. Definitely let me know down in the comments. What are your top 3 series? But if you want to, you can split it like I have, with your top 3 being sort of your top 3 more serious, long-form series versus your top 3 sort of light-hearted, easy-to-watch series as well. They're my opinions. Please don't hate me too much in the comments. So we're moving on to part 3, which is football and FPL related questions. There weren't too many of these, and I didn't want to spend too much time talking about FPL because that's not the purpose of this video. But a slightly personal question related to football was, when did your love for United begin / where did it come from? Always find it interesting, and these are always interesting stories. So as you can see behind me, got my picture of Bruno doing his celebration. I've got the Ronaldo which was when he scored 2 goals on his debut against Newcastle, his second debut. So love those 2 pictures behind me. I am a massive Manchester United fan. I have been since birth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flash some pictures up just there, and they're going to be pictures of Baby Raptor in some different Manchester United kits, just so that you can see I'm not glory hunting. I didn't randomly start supporting Man United when I was about 15. So with respect to where the passion came from, it was actually my granddad. So my granddad is no longer with us now. He is Nana Raptor's husband. That is that side of the family. So my granddad, or Granddad Raptor, I guess we could say, he supported Manchester United for most of his life. And he started supporting Manchester United when they weren't that fantastic. So he was born in the 1930s. So it would have been around sort of 1950, 1960, he started to support Manchester United. And he'd followed them all of those years. Now, he wasn't born in Manchester, but basically when he decided to start following football, he had a free choice. And I think he liked a lot of the players associated at that time. And he decided at that period of time to start supporting Manchester United. And therefore, my mum was born into a Manchester United supporting family, and as a result I was born into that family as well. So I've supported Manchester United since birth because of the fact that my family have always supported them, and I didn't really get much of a choice. And by the time that I had a choice, there was no way I was going to go for a different club, and I massively fell in love with the club. I fell in love with everything that it stood for. Of course, when I was younger, it was still the glory days. We had Sir Alex Ferguson, and it was all going perfectly well. So I'm not used to the sort of turmoil that we're experiencing now as a Manchester United fan, but I'm very, very passionate, always have supported Manchester United, always will. Been to quite a few, considering I don't live up north, been to quite a few games. I think been to about maybe 26, 27 different games. I've got all of the tickets still. I think my first game was against Bayer Leverkusen. I think it was in like 2003, 2004. It was in the Champions League. I've still got the tickets to this day. So I've been to quite a few in the past. Absolutely love Manchester United. I'm sure you would have seen some of the pictures here of me in Manchester United kits. And yeah, that's where my passion came from. That's where my love for the club came from my granddad, who's no longer with us. And I know he would be incredibly proud of what I'm doing on this channel, and also the fact that I'm still passionately supporting Manchester United as well. The next question was quite a fun one. If you had to manage a 5-a-side football team, which past and present players would you choose? Now, what I've done is I've chosen players that I've actually watched. Again, I'm 24, probably started watching football properly around the age of about 8 or 9 and actually understanding it maybe about 10, 11. So we're talking about maybe about 2005, 6 onwards. So I'm not going to talk about players from before that. Equally, if there are players that was coming towards the end of their careers, then I probably wouldn't put them in here. So these are purely players that I've watched that I also think would suit a 5-a-side well and that would have a nice balance to them. So this is more of a practical thing than just choosing the 5 best players I know. So I'll flash the team up on the screen and I'll work through it just to explain what it is. So in goal, we've got Van der Sar. Always has been my favourite goalkeeper. So again, when I started watching, I don't think Schmeichel was still in goal then. He might have just been coming towards the end of his career. But my earliest memories of watching Manchester United was with Van der Sar in goal. Absolutely love him, love his personality, love the way he commanded the pitch. And I just think he would absolutely dominate a 5-a-side goal. I don't think anyone would be able to score with him in goal. At centre-back, I've got Ferdinand. I think Vidic is probably my favourite centre-back of all time, but I just think that Vidic is maybe a bit clumsy for a 5-a-side game and doesn't cover the ground as quickly as Ferdinand. So I think Ferdinand would be pretty good as like a little sweeper at centre-back. Obviously, my favourite centre-back due to being a Manchester United fan, so I don't think I could go elsewhere. Of course, there are some fantastic other centre-backs that I watched in my time, but I'm going to stay true to Ferdinand. In sort of defensive midfield, covering the defence a bit and also transitioning into attack, I've got Kante. So the reason for having Kante in is that basically he would cover the entire 5-a-side pitch by himself in about 3 seconds. And I just think that he would play really well in protecting Ferdinand as the lone defender. So I think if I were to play sort of this sort of formation, I think you need someone that can cover the ground quite well. And also he is technically quite able as well. So I think Kante would be probably the best sort of sweeper. I would quite like Makelele in there as well. I really enjoyed him. That was very, very early on in when I started watching football. But I used to always pretend that I was Makelele when I shoot. So I used to scream, Makelele, when I used to shoot back in the day when I used to play football. So maybe I have Makelele in there as well. But Kante's a perfectly fine choice. And then I've chosen Rooney to link the attack and the midfield. The reason for that is that he's just a fantastic footballer, obviously, but also he can play sort of in that central attacking midfield role. He can drop into midfield, great short and long passing, and also he's got a great shot on him as well. So I think Wayne Rooney would be a fantastic option to link between Kante and then also my striker, who's just got to be Messi. Considering I'm a Manchester United fan, I've never been that passionately in favour of Ronaldo. I think they've both got their pros, they've both got their cons. I'm not going to answer that question here because I don't think Ronaldo versus Messi actually makes sense as a question because they're both fantastic in their own right. But in a 5-a-side game, it's got to be Messi. I don't think there are many better footballers in world football that would be good. Maybe Neymar because due to the skills, but I think Messi would be one of the best 5-a-side players possible. So that's my 5-a-side team: Van der Sar, Ferdinand, Conte, Kante, Rooney and Messi. Let me know down below who your 5-a-side team would be. Try and take into account things such as formation and also balance as well. I'm pretty happy with that considering that I've only been watching football, I guess, for about 20 years since the age of about 4. So I don't think I had that many players to choose from the past. But that's my 5-a-side. Let me know your 5-a-side team down below. So I thought the final question, we just make it FPL to tie it up together at the end because, of course, this is an FPL channel. So the question is, what is your best and worst ever game week score? So I'll flash up on screen now because I've actually got a screenshot of it because it was on when I was on Twitter last season. My best ever score, as far as I can remember anyway, was 137 points. And that was a bench boost in game week 30 plus. So this was just after the lockdown was lifted and teams went back into plan. So it was Project Restart in the Premier League last season. So it's got 137 points on a bench boost. So you can see Ederson in goal, Target with 7 points. Bowley and Doherty with 6 and 12, so double Wolves defence. Grealish with a 4 points, a bit disappointing. De Bruyne and Mahrez scoring 51 points between them with captaincy. Fernandes with a 9, Jimenez with an 8. Abraham, bit disappointing. I do remember that. I think he might have picked up an injury or maybe got booked. I do remember that though. Abraham blanking was quite the shock. Aubameyang with 4 points. I had then a full bench of returns. So what do you pick up? 11, 18, 23 points on the bench there. Leno with a 6, McGinn with a 5, Baldock and Lundstrom. So that was when Sheffield United were actually pretty good. So that's the best score that I can remember and I actually have evidence of from my bench boost when I was on Twitter at that time. Now, I think my lowest score is 16 points, but it was the season before I joined Twitter, so I don't actually have a screenshot of that available. So 16 points is the lowest I've ever got. I think I pretty much got 2 pointers from most. I got 1 0 pointer, someone got sent off, and then there was 1 pointer as well. It was early on in the season, and I think I recovered all right from it, but it wasn't a great week. So we're talking the difference between a good and a bad week was around 16 points versus 137 points. But I was pretty proud of that because the highest was 165, so it was one of my better game week ranks, and it's just always good to pick up a score that good. Outside of my sort of worst score, I do remember my worst ever event, or the one that hurt the most. It was also last season. It was just before we went into lockdown. I triple captained Aguero for a double game week. He picked up a 1 pointer in the first game, and before the second game could be played, we went into lockdown. So it didn't count, and then I didn't get the second game. So I triple captained Aguero for 3 points. So maybe not as bad as triple captaining Dennis if you did that this week, but still not a great memory. And that's the one that sticks in my mind, at least in recent years. So that's my best ever score. Let me know down below if you've got your best ever score in FPL, your worst ever score in FPL. But yeah, that's the final question. Thought it'd be nice to tie it back in with FPL. So guys, there you have it. That is my 10,000 subscriber Q&A. If you watched the entire video, let me know down below that you're someone that watched it. That would be absolutely incredible. And if you are, I guarantee you are probably someone that subscribed. So I just want to say thank you so much for supporting me, for supporting the channel. Specific shout out to the Rap Tier members as well, who not only support by watching, liking and commenting, but also by becoming members. I appreciate you very much. This will be the final piece of non-FPL content for a while. Don't worry about that. Of course, if you do want to watch any different videos from the breaks so far, I'll put some different videos on the screen now. There'll be things around the wildcard guide. There's also the FPL Psychology 101. And then we've got at least 3 or 4 different videos plus a live stream before the start of Game Week 24. So plenty to look out for. Please subscribe if you are new to the channel and you haven't already. But thank you so much for watching. Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.